You're live. We are live. So the show starts. Good morning, everybody. Last day of the Tropentag and the last poser presentation session. For me, it's a continuation of the knowledge presentation, live audio oral presentation of yesterday. And I don't like to repeat myself, but I want to say that knowledge, education, for me, are maybe the most essential things in, let's say, in most sectors, in most professions, including agriculture. We have the classical factors of production: land, labor, and capital. But without knowledge, without skills also, which are different from knowledge, nothing really is productively set into motion. And we need these skills, the knowledge, education, and of course extension to provide this knowledge to farmers to have good working and effective, efficient agriculture. So I think that is a very important topic. I think the particular thing with knowledge is that it is extremely difficult to measure, and that is different from land, labor, and capital. So we are here in an area of science which is much more difficult to describe, analyze, and that makes it sometimes more difficult also to carve out the essential things. We hope that we can contribute to carving out these essentials with this session. We have 12 poster presentations. For each of them, we have about 3 to 4 minutes. Half of our contributors cannot be with us live, but it still has been decided to show their posters so that you have an impression what is on there, but we cannot provide the opportunity to ask questions and letting them answer by the author. So for these poster presentations, we will simply show the little quick clip and then go on. And for that, because the time is very short, we jump into the poster session with the clip of Isabel Hirsch. Yeah, and I think the title and everything else will be on that clip. So we start.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Isabel Hirsch. I am working at the Bonn-Rhein-Sieg University of Applied Sciences and in the project ProkiNet. Today I want to present my poster using a hotspot analysis as the basis for target group-specific training materials on insect rearing. The background of my topic is that entomophagy is very popular worldwide and insect rearing is on the rise. We want to implicate insect rearing in Myanmar and Madagascar, where insect consumption is common, but not insect production. In our study, we aim to question if insect rearing is sustainable and how rearing strategies need adaptation to local conditions. As method, we use the sustainability hotspot analysis. This is a tool for identifying social and ecological potential problematic aspects along the entire life cycle of a product. First, we did a literature review on the European insect value chain to get an overview of hotspots along this value chain. And in addition, we did some interviews with different local stakeholders for a better understanding of the steps of the value chain, especially the insect rearing. According to these interviews, potential hotspots were identified for the social aspects training and education, as well as the environmental aspects energy resource and raw materials like feed for the insects or insect eggs. It became clear that information materials are needed that are adapted to local conditions and that rearing strategies according to Western countries are not suitable. For example, for farmers, these materials need to be visual and simple with a lot of practical parts, like as you can see here. Further adaptation strategies are that you can use black containers that keep the heat better for regions with cold nights, or you can use sticks instead of egg carton. The selection of an appropriate species is suitable. Here we've chosen the black soldier fly, as it can be used as livestock feed and it converts organic waste into healthy protein. And another adaptation strategy is the collection of insects from the wild. But then it is necessary to feed them first with feed that they already know from the nature, like pineapple leaves. The sustainability hotspots were mostly detected for the social aspects concerning the knowledge. But this is just a starting point. Further research is needed to develop materials that are better adapted to local conditions, and it is also necessary to differ between Myanmar and Madagascar. Our outlook. We expect that if insect rearing increases in Myanmar and Madagascar, the frass and waste treatment, frass is like the excrements of insects, might become another hotspot. And this possible hotspot needs to be taken into account in further hotspot analysis, the interviews, and further studies. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, as Isabel is not with us, we just have to thank her for an interesting insight into a new area, not for us, for Europeans, a new area of food and nutrition security, which is insect rearing. And we will continue to the second presentation, which is by Esther Muyuka and a group of authors, which I will not try to spell out. She may want to do so. And yeah, Esther, you have the floor. You have to, I don't know. Yes, the screen sharing is here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Mujuka, and together with my co-authors, I welcome you to our poster on willingness to pay for post-harvest technologies among smallholder mango farmers in Kenya. This study was conducted within the University of Nairobi Post-Harvest Project. It is estimated that 30% of food produced is lost in the supply chain. The losses are higher in perishables such as mango. Reduction of the food loss and waste is an important target in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Smallholder farmers lack on-farm cold storage and processing facilities, and this is a key driver of the food loss and waste in horticultural value chain. Innovative cold storage and small-scale processing technologies exist, and their effectiveness has been demonstrated. However, adoption of these technologies among smallholder farmers is limited due to lack of awareness, access, and the cost. This study, therefore, sought to estimate the willingness to pay for selected low-cost storage and small-scale processing technologies, such as the zero-energy brick cooler, the evaporative charcoal cooler, and the tunnel solar dryer. The study was conducted in Embu and Machakos counties in Kenya, where a household survey involving 320 smallholder mango farmers was conducted. Data was collected on awareness on post-harvest technologies, willingness to pay amount for post-harvest technologies, socioeconomic, demographic, and institutional factors. Descriptive methods were used to estimate mean willingness to pay, and the double hurdle regression model was used to estimate factors influencing probability of willingness to pay and the willingness to pay amount. Results reveal that most farmers are willing to pay for the charcoal cooler that is more affordable than the more efficient brick cooler and the tunnel solar dryer. Mean willingness to pay amounts reveal that farmers are willing to pay lower than the market prices for all the technologies. Factors that positively influence the probability of willingness to pay were marital status, the initial bid, agricultural group membership, market access, and the mango income. Gender positively influenced the probability of willingness to pay in Machakos County, but negatively in Embu County. Willingness to pay amount was positively influenced by the initial bid, the agricultural group membership, and the mango income. Experience, credit access, market access, land tenure, and age negatively influence the willingness to pay amounts. Awareness campaigns are therefore necessary to raise awareness on post-harvest technologies. Charcoal coolers were found acceptable. However, the willingness to pay amount for all the post-harvest technologies suggested that most of the farmers would prefer the technologies at lower than the current market prices. Therefore, short-term price subsidies and/or tax exemption on fabrication materials are recommended. Credit access negatively influenced willingness to pay amount, and there is need to invest in measures that would make credit work for value addition in horticulture. Most farmers were in informal land tenure systems, and this discouraged willingness to pay for post-harvest technologies. The government therefore needs to strengthen land tenure security to avert uncertainty. Would like to thank the Rockefeller Foundation for supporting this study and all our partners. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Esther. You have to know your micro is muted. So if you now, we have no questions as of now in the Woofer app. So now for all those people who are listening to us, I see in the Woofer app that 34 people are attending us. You can write your questions into the device, into the Woofer device. Yeah? So just if you don't know, there is a chat function, and there you can post questions. Now, knowing that there are no questions from the broader audience, we have two possibilities. Either some of you from our presenters have questions. You are also invited, of course, to have a dialogue. I think here it's even easier than in the poster sessions during the live Tropentag, because it is not so noisy. I appreciate that very much. And Esther, if nobody poses a question from either the audience or... Aha, here's one. There comes one. The question is, did you calculate the benefits of the different technologies in relation to costs? So you mentioned costs in your presentation, but not the benefits. Esther, yeah?
Okay, thank you. In our earlier study, we did an ex ante where we looked at the potential economic benefits of this, and there we took care of benefits and costs. Here we were focusing on the acceptability of the technologies. Thank you.
Okay, can you say which one were the most cost-benefit efficient of your technologies? Was there a relation to the willingness to pay?
Yeah, the solar dryer was the most cost-effective, because these markets for dried horticulture products and the prices that fetch are much higher than selling the raw fruit. And that was followed by the brick cooler and the charcoal cooler.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, if you compare charcoal and solar cooler in Germany, many people would be not more than astonished, shocked that charcoal can be labeled sustainable energy. I have worked on charcoal. I agree with you, but how can you? Did you think about how to make this charcoal sustainable? How can you label charcoal as sustainable energy? Because many people think charcoal, that is chopping trees and cutting them and deforestation instead of sustainability.
Yeah, that's a good question. And given that in our country, about 80% of the population do not have access to electricity in the rural areas, we thought this would be an alternative because the country banned charcoal selling, but it still goes ahead. So we thought, yes, it's not sustainable, but
It's
yeah,
practical.
it's practical, yes.
I think, no, sorry,
Yeah.
maybe it was the question was a bit mean. I think if you replant the trees, and if it is not only about charcoal producing, but also to sustainably producing the trees and the wood, then I think that is a perfect technology for rural Africa. But in this case, you really must look at the whole value chain, which starts with planting, replanting trees. And then I think we have a technology which fits very well into most rural systems. So that was my own comment to that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we have to continue because that is really a very interesting topic. What is the best Africa, but we have to continue. And we continue with the presentation of Steffen Münch, who is not present, but we still have his presentation, I assume. So the administrator, he will show us the clip.
Dear audience, my name is Steffen Münch, and together with my co-author Miroslava Bavarova, I would like to welcome you to our poster presentation regarding the factors influencing the adaptation towards climate change among smallholder tea farmers in Ilam, Nepal. As you can see in the research outline, our objectives were centered around the adaptation behavior in terms of how many adaptation strategies and which specific strategies were applied by the tea farmers, and secondly, which demographic institutional information sources do likely have an influence on the choice and the extent of the adaptation behavior of the farmers in the area. For that, we developed a questionnaire with 4 main topics. Firstly, the adaptation in general, then the information access, economic performance, and social demographic aspects. We went to the Ilam district in Nepal and completed 91 questionnaires among the tea farmers in this district and analyzed the data with SPSS through descriptive statistics, multiple regression, and binary logic regression. In figure 1, you can see the usage of the specific adaptation strategies, which we also derived from our literature review. Crop diversification and soil conservation was applied by most of the tea farmers, whereas irrigation-related adaptation strategies, such as water conservation, was only applied by a very small share of the respondents. That leaves agroforestry and the usage of less climate-sensitive cultivars with a relatively balanced share of farmers who use it and who don't use it. Hence, we use those 2 adaptation strategies for our binary logic regression. The results you can see in table 1. I highlighted the statistically significant factors which showed that access to credit, cooperative membership, the information source as other tea farmers, and the attendance and trainings positively influenced the adaptation behavior for those 2 adaptation strategies. As conclusions, we can say that information sources and institutional variables positively influence the adaptation behavior. The average number of strategies used by the farmers was 3, where 1 was the minimum and 6 was the maximum. And the farmers also noted that insufficient governmental support is the biggest constraint to adapt properly. Based on that, we would give the following recommendations. Firstly, more effective policies have to be developed so that the farmers have easier access to credit. Secondly, the governmental plans, which means the tea export strategy, has to be communicated better to the farmers. Thirdly, also memberships to cooperatives should be encouraged. And lastly, the focus on training and education in regards to irrigation has to be strengthened because it has a high perceived impact but a low rate of adaptation. With that, I want to thank you for your attention and wish you a pleasant day.
Yeah, and unfortunately, again, we cannot pose questions to Steffen because he, for some reason, any reason, he cannot be with us. It's a pity because yesterday we had also another presentation on irrigation, irrigation adaptation in Nepal, and that presentation also showed that it is a very stacked and complicated issue. It's not only about knowledge; it is clearly about many other factors of production which have to be in line and accessible to farmers. But so the recommendation is clear, but it has a lot of additional consequences which are complicated to fulfill. We continue with a presentation of Patrick Arthur Grötz and a group of co-authors. Again, he is not with us, but the presentation is here. Oh, sorry, I have to see the administrator says I don't have his video. So he is not only not there, we do not have his video. So we skip him and continue with a clip by Mariam Tajeri Mokhadam, who is also not present, but I hope this video is with us. Please, administrator.
Hello, good day. I'm presenting this poster. This poster is about typology of farmers' perception regarding water conservation as a road to food security. As you know, water scarcity along with rapid population growth, urbanization and climate change has become one of the world's most challenging problems. In the agricultural sector, as a food producer and the largest consumer of water in the world, it's necessary to manage and protect water. So farmers' water conservation behavior is an important factor for food security and ending hunger. Farmers have heterogeneous attitudes, values, viewpoints, and behaviors, thus showing different perceptions and behavior on water conservation strategies and policies. Therefore, the aim of this study is to characterize and classify farmers' perception regarding water conservation in northern Iran Neshabur plain, with farmers selected use stratified sampling method. The data were collected by a questionnaire administered during face-to-face interviews with farmers. The result of the K-means cluster analysis showed that farmers can be divided into four clusters. Comparison of the four clusters reveal that farmers in the first cluster have a higher level of egalitarianism worldview. Farmers in the second cluster have a higher hierarchical worldview. Farmers in the third cluster have a higher level of individualism, and finally, the fourth cluster has a high level of fatalism. Identifying these different perspectives can be useful in planning and policy making in dealing with water scarcity, so that each group of farmers can be offered specific strategies and policies to increase their impact and reduce cost. Thank you for your attention. Hello, good day. I'm presenting this poster. This poster
Yeah, I think the video clip itself had some, I don't know, some problem maybe. It stopped at the half, but I think the main message has been conveyed. Mariam is not with us. That's a pity. I found it quite interesting in this case because she doesn't treat smallholders as a uniform group. She has clusters. And many other presentations simply put a regression on all the smallholder farmers, assuming that you can, by a linear regression, you can capture the differential aspects, but in a cluster analysis, it makes it more clear that smallholders are maybe not a homogeneous group of people, especially when it comes to knowledge, skills, and so on. That is why I liked it, but unfortunately she is not with us. And also for the audience there was, for example, somebody posted a question to Steffen, but Steffen is not with us. So please be aware to only post questions or expect answers for questions from authors who are also here in our meeting, in our group, so that we can forward these questions to the person. Sorry for that. We continue with Anna Braun. She is here and she has a presentation and she will talk live.
Yes, I think you should now hear the presentation and hear my voice.
Yes, we do.
Good. Let's start.
Now we don't hear you, Anna. Sorry, but now it doesn't work.
But before you heard me, right?
Yes.
But not the audio of the video, more your voice.
Yeah, that is intended. Maybe the capacity of the line is... try it again, please.
I think you have to speak by yourself.
Yeah, we'll do like this, but it was not intended to do. Okay, so welcome to my presentation. I hope you see it now. So it's about the potential of a Greenway app in Myanmar. And it was my bachelor thesis, which I did together with my supervisor, Dr. Dominic Gunnar from HAFL in Switzerland. We worked together with the Gulf of Matama project in Myanmar. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
The aim of the study, as I said, we wanted to know potentials and challenges of an app. And you can see this Greenway app on the right-hand side of the slide. It has two main features. So first, farmers get information on agricultural topics, this app. And then the other feature is that there is a farming record where farmers can put their agricultural information inside the app. And the Gulf of Matama project hopes to be able to collect economic data from the farmers through this app. So instead of going to the farmers and doing interviews, they get it directly from the app. And it has also the advantage that farmers will see their costs and benefits of certain crops directly when they enter their data. So for the methods of the study, I talked with 59 households in the Gulf of Matama. I had some interviews with the company that developed the app and focus group discussions with farmers. And then, of course, we analyzed not only data on crop economics, but also on the use of smartphones and apps in the region. Okay, so here you see that around 90% of the farmers I talked with said that they actually have access to a smartphone. But when it comes to using smartphones, the number drops drastically. So there are a lot of reasons for this. For example, that a lot of farmer households have a smartphone, but then also more the younger generation can use it. Then 39% no apps for agricultural information, and 33% said that they know the Greenway app. Then for using Greenway as an information source, so for the one part of the app, 13% of the farmers said that they use it. And then for the data recording, this was just released during my service, so we don't have any data there, but it will be very interesting to see how many farmers actually are able to enter their economic data into the app. So as conclusion, I saw that training is very crucial, not only on the use of the app, but also on the use of smartphones in general. And we need very precise data from the app, so it's crucial to have this training. And then for future cost-benefit analysis of the project, we also need other ways of data collection, not only the farming record tool on the app, because the farmers that use the app don't necessarily are the same group of farmers that don't use the app. So for the collection of data, this will increase through mobile phones, and it's really in the launch in Myanmar, but also in other developing countries. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to receive some questions.
Thank you, Anna. I have no questions here on my woofer screen, so if there's no any question from our group, let me simply ask. I imagine that I would have to put in my farm data into an app as a farmer. I doubt that I would take the time, let's say, regardless of whether I have the data, I need to read and write, I need a lot of time. Not all of these data are measured. What are there incentives for farmers to do so? I see an app where you can get information, but can you get additional information or any other benefit to provide these data?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's a really good one, because I asked myself the same these months. And as I talk with farmers, they're really happy to see these costs and benefits in a table, like as a summary for themselves. That's something they like about it. And they also hope to get like really precise information on how they could improve their farming techniques. But this is something we could talk about in the future, but it's not something that is intended to be done by the project right now. But of course, there need to be incentives targeting farmers directly, of course.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's very challenging, let's say, especially if you, I mean, there are some kinds of extension information which are general and everybody can use, but as soon as you want to improve the specific situation of a farmer, of a specific situation, you need a kind of personal advice or something like that to really dig deep into the problems of a farmer, and therefore that you may need an interactive tool where specifically on the data that you provide, you get also specific recommendations for your farm, for your individual farm. If not, it doesn't make so much sense. If not, you just get the same gross information on best period of sowing and so on, which is not it's helpful for, let's say, for a less educated farmer, but for those who are capable of having an individualized farm sheet, farm information, it is maybe not enough. Would be very interesting also to see in the future how this project is dealing with it. Thank you very much. We go on to the next presentation of Anna-Pia Debary, and she is also with us and has a presentation online. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Anna-Pia Debary, and I would like to shortly present my poster, Who's Afraid of Postcolonial Theory? With this, I would like to take away the fear of post-colonial theories and encourage an intensified debate of epistemological questions in practice-oriented research here at Tropentag. The poster presentation is not a very good format to present such a complex topic. That's why at this point only a few points. Starting point for this presentation was that all the practical development research has a direct impact on many people in the Global South. For example, through policy recommendations and their implementation, power relations in knowledge productions are rarely questioned. Knowledge in development research is very often still produced by Global North institutions, dominated by Western researchers, and deeply rooted in a Eurocentric school of thought. Meanwhile, Global South voices are still struggling for epistemic freedom. So in this presentation, I would like to highlight some of the epistemological dimensions by drawing on some of the central writings in feminist postcolonial theory and exploring some practical implications. In particular, I would like to draw attention to Spivak's essay, Can the Subaltern Speak?, and Mohanty's essay, Under Western Eyes. Spivak uses an example from the British colonial occupation of India to illustrate how women were systematically oppressed by both colonial and national powers and had no space where they could actually speak themselves. Mohanty explores how Western feminist scholarship has reduced Third World women into one single category and describes this as an act of colonization. I have outlined here in my poster some of the approaches or strategies drawing on feminist perspective of knowledge production that can help us to shape our own process of knowledge production. And from my own research experience, I can say that using these key concepts can really help to uncover some of the power relations. For example, while in my research it was quite easy to access female perspectives, through my own female identity, it was still very difficult to overcome power relations generated by other identity features. And I could rarely make subaltern groups speak. So I would like to open the debate on these points, and I'm very happy to hear some comments from you. And I thank you for your attention.
Yeah, Anna Pia, thank you for this provocative speech and poster. Unfortunately, the poster is very difficult to read, impossible to read on the screen. I have to admit that. There's a question from Finn. Yes, of course. I have a question. Is it all right? Or was it on the last?
Yes, there was a question from the poster before. But thank you very much for the really interesting poster right now. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a question right now to this poster, but this is a really interesting and important topic. And yeah, I will get to the poster on the full screen later on.
Good. Yes. What strikes me, Anna Pia, is of your discourse is on a very abstract level. No? If you see, for example, most of the what is dealt with here as knowledge is very often technical knowledge on irrigation and planting and breeding and insect rearing. One question, I understand I'm working a lot with sociologists and political scientists. I understand this discourse, but do you see a place for this discourse critique in agricultural science as an applied natural science? Just would be interesting for me, because you have heard now a lot of presentations from our side, so let's say from more from the technical people, maybe naively, because we are apolitical in that sense, we as agriculture. So question, do you see a space also here for this more meta-level discourse analysis?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question and your interest. I do see a possibility here. This is not maybe a recommendation to read those texts. I mean, you may do that as well. However, if you look more in the approaches from a methodological point of view, then I do see a quite easy way, which is starting a discourse with other colleagues. How is power shaped in our own research? How can we reflect our knowledge and our position also? So these key concepts that I didn't mention directly, but for example, reflexivity or positionality, basically really means or basically sends a very basic message, which is that you just reflect how you collect your data and in which position you are. For example, through your position as a man, or through, in your case now, or through your position as a white person. So if you take these entry points, I think there's also a chance for more natural scientists or also or the main idea was basically to bring this or to start a debate on this. So I understand it's a bit provocative, but I do see some ways here. So I want to encourage exactly these thinking and these debates. Thank you.
Would be a really good occasion to start a debate. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, but I think that is very interesting. I was once asked by a journalist about post-colonialism in African agriculture, and I said, "Oh, okay." What I immediately came to my mind is all these crops which are exported nowadays. And you mentioned tea, or we had here mentioned tea and coffee and cotton. Of course, kind of post-colonial colonial remains of. On the other hand, they are very important for income generation of farmers nowadays. So I think the discourse must be much more, I think, sophisticated than just blaming the colonial time for having done this and this, because several of these remnants are constituting columns of economy, of livelihoods. I think it's difficult to get a balanced view on this, but I think the discourse is really worth the effort. I don't know how to do it.
Thank you.
Thank
just
you for
by the way,
yeah.
Just shortly, I am myself working on irrigation, so okay. There is always a way to even on technical topics to apply these kinds of strategies.
So I take your presentation as a call for more self-reflection on what we do, where we are, and with whom, and whom we do support with that. Thank you very much. We go on to the next presentation. She's also online with us, Tatiana Rodriguez, and a long list of co-authors. And Tatiana, where are you? Yeah, here. You have the floor with your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tatiana Rodriguez, and together with my co-authors, I am welcoming you to listen the development and results of a research that assesses the scaling up potential of agroforestry systems for cocoa farming and cattle ranching, that is, cocoa agroforestry systems and silvopastoral systems in two different regions of Colombia, Cesar and Caquetá. As many of you know, agroforestry systems have been recognized as land use strategies that contribute to biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation, as well as sustainable rural livelihoods. These systems are the most appropriate use for around 16% of Colombian land and have proven to be sustainable in cocoa and cattle production. However, the potential contribution of agroforestry systems in the study regions remain limited because cocoa crops, which are usually managed under the shade, are still underdeveloped, and cattle ranching is traditionally managed extensively. So, this research intends to answer two questions. What are the requirements for promoting agroforestry systems with cattle and cocoa farming in Cesar and Caquetá, Colombia? and which factors could hinder agroforestry system scaling up within these two farming systems in the study regions. To do so, we implement Scala, a sustainability impact assessment tool, which includes the assessment of the relevance of 11 resource requirements and 59 scaling up factors divided into 7 categories using a scoring system. In the end, the tool generates a percentage deviation from an optimal situation, so the lower the values of deviation, the more likely successful scaling up potential will be. We did the assessment through 16 individual and 2 group interviews in both study regions with representatives from rural extension institutions, agricultural research institutions, NGOs, and universities. Regarding resource requirements for promoting agroforestry systems, the main results show that agricultural and natural resource management laws are still required for promoting, above all, silvopastoral systems in both regions. The promotion of both farming systems also requires medium or high financial capital, marketing facilities, and processing facilities. Land availability is not a barrier for promoting agroforestry systems in both regions. In relation to scaling up potential, we found it is perceived slightly higher for cocoa agroforestry systems than for silvopastoral systems in both study regions. Within the category of attributes of the system, the scaling up potential of both farming systems is hindered by insufficient access to financial means by farmers to afford the cost of implementing these systems. The lack of a stable market that guarantees reasonable prices for products derived from agroforestry systems is one of the factors within the economic condition at the local level that hinders their scaling up. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Tatiana, is there any question from here? I don't see anyone, some from the audience. The Woofer platform, by the way, is active. I have already seen a reply, for example, from Steffen, who for some reason cannot connect to the Zoom. So it was a technical problem, but he has answered now through the Woofer. So the platform is active, but it is working, and it's also open, it seems, to people who cannot join the Zoom meeting for some way. Is there a question for Tatiana? Tatiana, I was once part of such a survey that you mentioned, an expert service survey. And it was at the start of a project. So we were all the researchers were asked about their opinion of scaling up. It was in Tanzania, and 3 years later, I got the impression that most of even of the researchers, even of local researchers, because it was new topics, and that is very often in research, the replies were not based on very sound knowledge of the topic. And I had the impression that many of our answers that we gave in the beginning of the research project were not, as I said, maybe not sound enough. And I asked myself whether such an instrument is not assuming too much. That is the nature, I think, of research, that you very often you do not know answers in advance. It is not like a development project. And I ask, what is your experience? Did you have the impression that those who you are serving are really sufficiently knowledgeable about the topic they are asked about to provide really sound answers?
Okay. We try to interview really experts in the field and try to select people who already have already worked on implementation of agroforestry systems in both regions. So in a way, I think that they were really experts on the topic. But for sure, the questionnaire has pre-established questions. So in a way, there is a bias when we are asking regarding the different factors for scaling up agroforestry systems. But we also try to not only ask particular questions based on a questionnaire, but also to open the discussion in each of the questions. And the idea is in a next step of this poster or this research to include also the qualitative analysis of the data. So in a way, we can catch other perceptions more than the pre-established question that we did.
Would be interesting for me, as I said, as a participant, would have been interesting to have 3 years after a validation of what we said. Would have been interesting to see 3 years after a reflection on our own perceptions at the beginning, so before, after, and that would also, I think, validate the tool. We have to continue, and yeah, please.
No, that's the idea of the project, but when
excellent,
where we are involved in. Yeah.
Very good. I think that is really a learning step forward. We have to continue, unfortunately. We go to the presentation of Laure Ledoux, and it will be presented by Daniel Kalnin. And you have also, I think, a presentation. You do it yourself. You share your screen. And we
you're still muted.
You have to unmute your microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah, now we hear you.
Now if I want to share my screen. Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much for giving me the possibility to present our poster very briefly. What we did in our field study is that I accompanied about 10 students of our university to compare the socioeconomic conditions of the employees of 2 distinct cocoa plantations. Those 2 cocoa plantations are definitely of the same company, but they are very different. They're very different in relief. The one is very uneven, the other is very flat. In one, the land is owned, in the other, the land is rented. In one, there's 3 players, so there's also independent field workers. There's 2 enterprises which are employing the field workers. In the others, there's only 1. In the one, all those systems are agroforestry systems. The one is wood and cocoa, and the other is palm oil, wood, banana, and cocoa. And also what is very different for the 2 is the size. So the one is a very small one, the other one is a palm oil plantation, which practically can get until 4,000 hectares. So it's 2 different plantations, and what the company wanted to know is, are the socioeconomic conditions which they see from the workers really different? Because the problem that they're facing, so the 2 different regions, one is here, the other one is around here. The 2 regions is that they have farm workers which leave the plantations. So what we did, we interviewed around 50 farm workers and analyzed the semi-directive interviews and pushed that further with directive interviews with expert social workers in those 2 plantations. And we also connected with that the interviewing school classes. What we found out is definitely there is things which are in common for all of those. Eventually it's the work, the hard work, it's physical hard work. But then what you can definitely see is there's specific themes for the 2 plantations, and this differences is definitely in the positive perceptions, also in the negative perceptions. And what you clearly see is that the people which are far from each other, they don't know about the other persons in the plantations. However, they appreciate totally different things and depreciate totally different things. Our interviews enabled the employer, to tackle the problem of rural exodus, because what they face as a company is that most of their skilled farm workers that they educate on the job, after a given time, they will leave to the countryside. So our study enabled the employer to handle the problem in order to achieve high quality chocolate in his fields. And with that, I have to thank you for your attention. Also, ISTOM, l'École supérieure d'agro-développement international, and Looker Agricola and Looker Chocolate for financing part of this study. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you very much also. Have you been successful in advising the plantation owners, the employers? Have they changed something?
They have changed something with respect that they applied things that they thought. As you have seen, there's one plantations which they're growing since 30 years. So they have their transport systems, they have educational systems, and those things they were thinking should they transfer it to the smaller plantation, and now they are actively doing it. So they follow at least 3 of our recommendations right now, and we're still keeping in contact with the company to see whether we can do another study and see whether the implementations and their activity has shown something on the field.
As a social research or as a political scientist would say, why don't these enterprises encourage their workers to form worker unions, maybe even link those unions so that they also can express their opinions and maybe even put pressure?
They have They have that locally in the big plantation. They have kind of things. However, in Colombia, it's not something which is well organized. And the problem is that those 2 plantations, they are worlds apart. The one is Caribbean, the other one is former cattle land, which is replanted. So it's 2 different regions, 2 different ways of thinking, of feeling how to work, of feeling how to organize. It's Colombians, but I think Tatiana can probably tell the same thing. The people, they're not the same people. They're different people. So that's why they will, even if you push them to organize, they won't easily organize.
Tatiana, you wanted to?
No, for sure. But what he is saying is right. But for me, it's very interesting because I didn't know this big plantation of cocoa in Colombia, because, for example, in my research, I was focused on small farmers also in the north and in the south of Colombia. But most of the cocoa production in Colombia come from small farmers.
Yeah. If you want,
this is very particular.
Definitely. It's an old palm plantation which they redesign for agroforestry, cocoa palm oil plantation.
And it's good to see that also entrepreneurs and they have an interest in knowing what their workers are, because workers can vote with their feet, at least in a country like Colombia, where there are maybe small alternatives. So good to see that.
But if you want to discuss this further, Tatiana, I'm open for discussion.
Very good.
Okay.
That would be a good result of this workshop here. We have to continue, but you are connected some way or another, I see. We have to continue with the presentation of Pius Nahive, who is not present, but I think we have his presentation, isn't it?
Here is the poster presentation for the role of extension and farmer groups in adopting modern agricultural technologies. Despite the inherent potential and merits of adopting modern agricultural technology, the present-day farmer in sub-Saharan Africa is yet to catch up with the rest of the world in harnessing this potential. This study examines the impact of agricultural extension support and farmer groups on technical adoption and their consequent impact on economic performance in the coastal regions of Kenya. Specifically, it will determine the effects of cashew farmer groups, membership, and extension support on adoption of modern agricultural technologies, and investigate the impact of adoption of modern agricultural technologies on cashew farmers' economic performance. The following hypotheses were derived from empirical studies, and based on these hypotheses, we conceptualized the framework where group membership and extension services influence adoption of agricultural technologies and consequently on economic performance. The research was carried out in 3 counties in the coastal regions of Kenya, Kilifi, Kwale, and Lamu, respectively. And at the end, 372 respondents were surveyed. Sampling method was used as multi-stage, stratified, quota, and snowball. And the data collection using questionnaire and distributive statistics, logit, and linear regression models were used. In the study, we identified 3 proxies for agricultural technology uptake, that is fertilizer usage, chemical spraying, and using appropriate planting density. The following logit model and simple linear regression models were specified for fertilizer usage, chemical spraying, and appropriate planting density. And these 3 proxies were used to determine the effect on economic performance. As you can see from the models, the dependent variables are planting density, economic performance, fertilizer usage, and chemical spraying. The other independent variables are farmer's age, education, farm size, household head, hired labor, or farm income, and the respective independent variables. These are the determinants for agricultural technology uptake, and from the analysis, we can see that group membership was significant, and extension as a dummy was also significant in across board. That means for fertilizer usage, chemical spraying, and planting density. For the analysis of the adoption of technologies on the impact of economic performance, we can see that these 3 variables, that group membership extension had a negative effect, although not significant, while appropriate planting density had a positive effect and was significant. It is interesting to observe that fertilizer use had a negative significant effect on economic performance. We conclude that access to extension services and group membership both have significant effects on adoption of modern agricultural technologies, namely fertilizer usage and appropriate planting density. But consequently, the appropriate planting density rather, has a significant effect on economic performance. We propose that the government of Kenya and the policymakers should focus resources on facilitating more farmer groups to increase information flow, especially the promotion of increased cashew planting density among farmers resident in the 3 major cashew-dominated counties. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the financial support for the FTA, Faculty of Tropical Agri-Sciences, Czech University of Life Sciences Internal Grant Agency, and the EU Emergency Trust Fund for Africa, Farm Africa, 10 Census for supporting the research. Thanks.
Yeah, and we hope that the extension service does not recommend use of agrochemicals if that has a negative influence on economic performance. But we cannot ask him now because he is not with us, but that would have been very interesting to see also whether the extension service content is adapted, let's say, to the realities on the ground, on farmers' fields, and not only on researchers' fields. We have to continue. There we have two presentations, and we are a little bit over time, but I think it's still okay. We have now the presentation of Amna Hassan Vida and a colleague with a very difficult name, and we have a presentation of them in our stall.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Ahmed Hamdi Al-Layabo. I am from Sudan. I am here today to introduce to you our study. Me and my colleague Amna Hassan Widaa. She's worked to Ministry of Agriculture, Khartoum State, and I worked in Federal Minister of Agriculture, Administration of Agriculture Extension and Technology Transfer. We're here to introduce our study titled with Applied Cognitive Evaluation of Citrus Producer related to agricultural operation for citrus orchard in Al-Gurer region, Marawi locality, Northern State, Republic of the Sudan. This study was conducted, as mentioned before, in the Al-Gurer region in Marawi locality. This area far from the capital Khartoum, about 450 kilometers. It grows the date palms, mango, fodder, spices, and some legumes, in addition of citrus fruit. The main result, number one, knowledge and application regarding establishment of orchard from the beginning among the respondents was low, about 28%. Knowledge and application regarding citrus trees pruning operation among respondents was low, 47%. Number three, knowledge and application regarding to other agriculture operation like irrigation or fertilization, insect knowledge and control was medium, about 56%. In general, the knowledge and application of the general operation in the citrus orchard in the study area were weak. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously it was Ahmed and not Amna who were presenting. Sorry for that. Do we have any questions to him? Ahmed, you are yourself in the working in the ministry.
Yes.
How are you linked to research, university research? How do you get into contact with results of university research, and how do you implement, or how do you absorb such knowledge that we are all producing?
Thank you for having me. You listen to me?
Yes, we do.
Some faculty of agriculture will they sent the recommendation of the study to our administration, agriculture extension, and we look for that result and what the problem we can deal with in the field.
Is there something like open days,
Yes.
open research days?
Yes, in the field, and there is school farming and some external visit. Just we made it before 1 month ago.
Mm-hmm. because I think many of our students wonder how their results can be channeled and to the relevant ministries, and what are the systems, the mechanisms to take up such information. For example, in open research, policymaker meetings, a national research day or something like that. Thank you. We have to continue, unfortunately, but I think it's interesting that
Thank
we
you.
have somebody really from the ministry here. Those are the people who are guiding extension services, extension systems, and I think that these are the entry points where we have to communicate with much more to really have a fruitful dialogue and to bring our results into fruition. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Last presentation today for this session is by Finn Kristen Mattison, and we have him on board live twice even, and a presentation which will come now.
Hello and welcome to the poster presentation on efforts education. My name is Finn Matthiesen and I work as scientist in the public relation project within the Collaborative Research Center 990 Efforts. Efforts stands for Ecological and Socioeconomic Functions of Tropical Lowland Rainforest Transformation System, and it investigates land use change in Jambi province on Sumatra in Indonesia. This land use change towards the domination of crops, all palm rubber, has environmental and socio-economic effects. Science-based knowledge as generated by this international interdisciplinary research team is crucial for informed decision-making concerning more sustainable land use. From a science education perspective, land use change can be labeled as socio-scientific issue, which is a factually and ethically complex, controversially discussed issue at the intersection of science and society. Up to now, teachers are not sufficiently prepared to teach such socio-scientific issues, and there's demand for educational material in Indonesian classrooms, but also worldwide. For bringing knowledge on these highly relevant socio-scientific issues into society, teacher education is a motor, since educators act as multipliers and change agents. In the center of the slide, you can see a map with 8 teacher education institutions and our Indonesian collaboration partners. Together with these partners, we aim to meet the following goals. We would like to qualify teacher educators for teaching efforts related to socio-scientific issues and foster competencies like decision-making, perspective-taking, dealing with complexity and socio-scientific reasoning. Therefore, we design collaboratively evidence-based efforts educational resources, test these resources, evaluated, implemented into Indonesian higher education and disseminated in Indonesia and worldwide. To put our goals in other words, we aim to impact teacher education in the short term, students at the school in midterm, and in the long term the public, nationally and globally. Our central research question is: how can efforts related to socio-scientific issues be educationally reconstructed and evaluated for teaching and learning in Indonesian teacher education? To design quality efforts educational resources, we have established a working structure called Professional Learning Community. This professional learning community consists of efforts scientific researchers, Indonesian and German teacher educators, as well as educational researchers. These experts work closely together to develop in pilot efforts education, to optimize it and test it at these teacher education institutions, implement it and further disseminate it throughout Indonesia and worldwide. To get more details and to discuss the evaluation approach, you can come to the poster session. Also, we have preliminary results for course concepts and learning material, which I can go through with you. And we can also talk about the outlook of the next phases of the project. For example, the question, how effective is resulting training with the educational course concepts and the corresponding materials. Thank you very much and see you at the poster.
Yeah, and Finn, thank you very much for this. And you have already invited us to further discuss with you. we have to close now because we have to run now for the plenary session. I was already invited here, but you are, of course, welcome to continue the debate. And I think with WUFA, you also have really a nice platform for discussion among yourselves and with the audience, because that is open even after the Tropentag is over. I have to conclude so here now. Thank you all for this. I think it was like a flower bucket of very different flowers, but all of them had their interest and their meaning, and together they form a quite nice understanding of the importance of knowledge, education, extension, even beyond the agriculture system. We have now heard, for example, about teachers and school pupils. So I think that is enough stuff for further thinking and also for post-colonial dialogue and discourse among ourselves and with the outside world. Thank you very much, and see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.